The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive Timelines members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. The duel has been going on long enough that Ahsoka Tano no longer feels her arms. She knows this sensation. She has cataloged it in the way that old warriors catalog pain, not with alarm, but with the quiet recognition of a body reminding itself it is still alive. Her mantrals ring with the impact of each clash. Her shoulders burn. The white blades in her hands are extensions of her will, and her will is thinning. Darth Vader does not tire. He never did. She spins left, and his red saber tracks her before she completes the motion. Not because he is faster, but because he knows her. He has always known her. 16 years of separation, and he still reads her footwork like a language he learned in childhood and never forgot. She catches the blow on crossed blades, and the force of it drives her back 3 steps across the stone floor of the temple's inner sanctum. The ancient Sith carvings blur past her periphery. Somewhere above them, the temple is groaning under forces neither of them put there. She doesn't have time to process that. He presses forward. 1 strike. 2. A third that she deflects into the floor and feels the vibration travel up through her boots. He is not trying to end this quickly. That, too, she recognizes. Vader in no hurry is the most frightening version of him. Measured. Inevitable. Absolute in his patience. She feints left, breaks right, drives the attack back at him for one burning exchange that she knows already she cannot sustain. Her lighter weight lets her move faster in short bursts. In a prolonged fight, he wins. He has always won in prolonged fights. That hasn't changed. What she is doing. What she has been doing from the moment she recognized the breathing in the dark above Malakor's ruins, is not trying to beat him. She is trying to reach him. She does not know if he is still in there. She has told herself, in the years since she walked out of the Jedi Temple and tried to cut herself free of everything that hurt, that she made peace with not knowing. She had not. She drives one white blade up and inside his guard, forcing him to twist his body to avoid it, and the movement costs him, not in footing, but in the geometry of his defense. Her second blade follows in a tight arc toward the mask. He blocks it. But not cleanly. The kyber white edge catches the lower curve of his faceplate at an angle it was not designed for. The sound is wrong. Not the clean ring of blade on blade, but something brittle, mechanical, final. The mask fractures in a diagonal line across the left side, the black shell splitting like eggshell under pressure, and the piece falls. Ahsoka steps back. She cannot help it. Her body stops before her mind tells it to. The piece of mask strikes the stone floor, and the sound it makes is small and ordinary, and completely wrong for the weight of what she is seeing. One eye. Human, yellow at the iris, Sith yellow, that corroded color that still sends a reflex of grief through her chest every time, but underneath the yellow, in the damaged blood vessels and the exhausted set of the skin around it. She can see the shape of a face she has not seen in 16 years. The architecture of it. The familiar line of a jaw she once watched laugh. She doesn't move. The breathing fills the space between them. Amplified by the damaged vocoder, ragged at the edges where the mask's seal has broken, each inhale more labored than the last. He stands across from her in the fractured half-darkness, his red blade still lit, one hand still on it, and the yellow eye looking at her with something she cannot name. Something that is not the cold, flat certainty of Darth Vader, something that has no word in the vocabulary of a Sith Lord. Ahsoka. The vocoder distorts it, breaks it across frequencies, but underneath the distortion is something that was never supposed to be there. Her name in Anakin Skywalker's voice. Her grip tightens on both hilts. The reflex of a woman who has learned what hope costs. She has said these words before. Not in this place, not in this exact shape of moment. But she has said them to herself in the dark, and she says them now aloud because they are the only true thing she has left. I won't leave you. The words come out steadier than she feels. Not this time. The red lightsaber hums between them. He should say it now. She knows what comes next. She has been braced for it since she ignited her blades in the shadow of his ship. Then you will die. She has been bracing for that line since she understood what this duel would have to be. A goodbye with no witness. A death that meant something even if no one ever knew. He doesn't say it. The yellow bleeds out. It doesn't happen in an instant. It happens the way dawn happens, too slowly to observe directly, so that by the time she registers it, it has already been happening for several seconds. The corroded amber drains toward the edges of the iris, thins, and what replaces it is blue. Clear, exhausted, 16 years older blue. The eye of a man who has been living at the bottom of a very long fall and has just, for the first time, felt something solid beneath his feet. The red blade goes out, not thrown, not driven into the stone in some dramatic gesture. It simply ceases, his hand opening, the hilt falling from fingers that have stopped holding anything, and the sound of it striking the stone is the only sound in the sanctum, small and specific and irrevocable. He drops to his knees. The breathing tears at itself. Without the full seal on the mask, each breath is work, audible effort, a body laboring at the basic contract of staying alive. His hands go to the floor, not in defeat. In the posture of a man who has not been on his knees in front of another living person in 16 years, and whose legs have simply given out under the weight of the moment. When he speaks, the vocoder is gone. Mask cracked open, modulator fractured. What comes through is analog and imperfect and entirely human. Low and raw and stripped of everything armor is supposed to provide. You stayed. A pause where breath should be. You actually stayed. Ahsoka does not move for a long moment. Then she deactivates her blades. The white light dies. In the dimness of the sanctum, lit only by the faint bioluminescent glow of the Sith carvings and the distant amber of emergency lighting somewhere above, she crosses the distance between them and goes to one knee in front of him. He looks up. The one exposed eye finding her face with the intensity of a man who has been told a thing he stopped believing in and is waiting for it to dissolve like every other dream. It doesn't dissolve. The younglings, he says. Not an introduction to a sentence. Just the word. Dropped alone, where it needs to be said first. Mustafar, Padam, all of it. Each word costs him. His jaw is tight around something that has no outlet in a body, wrapped entirely in armor. I need you to know. I need someone to. Anakin, she says it quietly. Not to stop him. To give him the word. His word. The one no one in the galaxy has said to him in 16 years. She watches him receive it the way a man dying of thirst receives water. Too much and not enough simultaneously. The confession doesn't come in a speech. It comes in fragments, out of order, the way trauma actually surfaces in a person rather than the way stories arrange it. Mustafar in one sentence. The youngling's face in another. Padam's name without a verb, because no verb is adequate. He presses his fist against the floor between them while he says it, as though he needs something to push against to keep speaking. She listens. She doesn't offer absolution. She doesn't reach for the comfortable lie that any of it is repairable. What she offers is the only thing she actually has, which is the specific, irreplaceable weight of another person staying where they are, while you say the unsayable. She is reaching for his arm, this armored, enormous, shattered thing that used to be the boy who called her Snips, when the first tremor moves through the floor. Then the second. Then the sound comes. Deep, structural. The groan of ancient stone deciding it has held long enough. Dust falls from the ceiling in long pale curtains. Ahsoka is on her feet before the third tremor finishes. Anakin. Different tone now. The one he would recognize from 100 campaigns. The one that meant now. The temple is coming down. The blue eye finds her. And despite everything, despite 16 years and Mustafar and the suit and the breathing and the weight of a galaxy's worth of grief still settling between them, the corner of his mouth moves. He knows that voice. He always knew that voice. The first corridor is already gone. Ahsoka rounds the corner where they entered the sanctum and finds stone, a solid wall of it. Ceiling collapsed flush to the floor, the passage sealed as completely as if it had never existed. Dust still blooms from the edges. The rock is still settling. They have maybe seconds before the next section goes. She turns back. Anakin is on his feet. Barely. The broken mask leaks each breath into the open air of the corridor in a way that is immediately, viscerally wrong. Too much effort for too little air. The damaged seal converting every inhale into a small crisis. He has one hand on the wall. Not for balance. For orientation. His depth perception is compromised with the mask split the way it is. The left side of his vision disrupted by the fractured plate still hanging loose across his cheek. She crosses back to him in 3 steps. No discussion. Her shoulder goes under his arm, and he takes the support without protest, which tells her more about the state of him than anything he could say. "Which way did you come in?" she asks. "East Passage." Sub-level 2. A pause where breath should fill the sentence. "It won't be there anymore. I know. Which way is your ship?" "North face." Surface level. He pushes off the wall, testing his own legs. They hold. 4 levels up. Above them something enormous shifts. The sound it makes is not a crack or a bang, it is deeper than that. A bass frequency that Ahsoka feels in her back teeth. The sound of geological mass in motion. The ancient Sith temple has been semi-dormant for centuries, its kyber-latticed structure absorbing the violence of the battle above it like a body absorbing poison, slowly, past a threshold that has now been crossed. It is not exploding. It is digesting itself. They move. The second corridor holds. The third is half blocked by a fallen support column, dark stone, massive, wedged at an angle that leaves a gap at floor level roughly half a meter high. Ahsoka drops to a crouch, assesses it in 1 second, and reaches out with the Force before Anakin can suggest an alternative. The column doesn't move. The stone behind it is pressing down with the full weight of whatever is above. She can feel it in the Force, the enormous compressive load, not something she can simply lift. What she can do is hold. She drives her will into the gap and maintains the column's angle, prevents the incremental slippage that would seal it completely. "Go," she says. He looks at the gap, then at her. "I can hold it for approximately 45 seconds, she says. He goes. Armor scraping stone, the mechanical breathing amplified against the floor, and she tracks his progress by sound alone, because her eyes are closed and all of her concentration is in her hands, braced against the invisible architecture of a weight that wants very badly to become smaller. She feels the column shift once, a centimeter, no more, and locks it back into place. Silence from the other side. Anakin, clear. His voice, muffled through stone. "Your turn." She releases the column and moves. The gap is tighter than it looked. She gets her shoulders through, her hips, and she is pulling her legs clear when the column drops, not catastrophically, just those final centimeters, the stone finding its new resting position with a grinding finality that clips the heel of her boot and sends a shock up through her ankle. She gets up, doesn't mention the ankle, files it. Anakin is looking at the sealed passage behind her, then at her. 43 seconds, she says. Something shifts in the exposed eye. Not quite a smile. The ghost of one, in a face that has apparently forgotten how. They move. The stairwell to sub-level 3 is intact. The one above it is not. The upper flight has sheared away from the wall entirely, hanging at a 40-degree angle. Attached to the landing above by what looks like 2 stress-fractured anchor bolts and the structural memory of 1,000 years of engineering that has finally run out of patience. Anakin studies it for one breath. "I can take the weight," he says. "Long enough to climb." She knows what that means. She also knows what his current respiratory situation means, and what asking his body to sustain a force hold under physical exertion means, and the calculation does not favor it. "I'll take it," she says. "Your ankle is fine. It is not fine. You need the air. Go." He goes first this time, and she watches him move up the hanging staircase with the careful economy of a man who has learned, in a body that cannot afford mistakes, to eliminate wasted motion. Each step tested before weighted, both hands on whatever is available. The staircase creaks once, deeply, and she reaches out and steadies it with the force, not lifting, just stabilizing, the way you steady a table with a loose leg so someone can finish their dinner. He reaches the landing. She crosses in 4 seconds and doesn't look down. Sub-level 1 is on fire. Not spectacularly, no open flame, just heat, the ambient temperature of stone that has been absorbing dark side energy discharge for the last hour finally radiating it back into the air. The corridor glows faintly amber along the floor where old Sith inscription channels run, the carved symbols lit from within by something that has no good explanation and doesn't need one. The air quality is deteriorating. She can feel it herself, a thickness, a reduction, and she is not the one breathing through a cracked life support system. Anakin's stride has shortened. She notices it in the way she notices tactical information, without judgment, as pure data. Each step is costing more than the last. The broken seal is forcing him to work his damaged lungs directly against Malachor's thin atmosphere, without the pressure regulation and filtration the mask provides, and a man who has been in that suit for 16 years does not have lungs that can simply compensate. She moves to his side. He shakes his head once. She ignores him and puts her hand flat against his back, between the shoulder plates where 2 sections of the suit meet, where she can feel the physical mechanics of each breath. She closes her eyes for 1 stride, 2, and reaches into the Force the way her future self learned to reach. In years of solitude on Corvus and before that, in the aftermath of everything, finding the rhythm of another person's autonomic system, and easing it. Not controlling, not healing. Just making the body's work slightly less like drowning. His stride lengthens. Incrementally, he doesn't say anything. After a moment, his hand finds her arm, the lightest contact, armored fingers on her sleeve, and that is the only acknowledgement either of them needs. The north face exit is sealed. Of course it is. Ahsoka looks at the blast door, designed to contain exactly this kind of structural emergency, dropped automatically when the temple's internal systems registered critical failure, and then at Anakin. He is breathing. He is here. He is not going to last another 20 minutes in this atmosphere. She plants both feet and reaches out with both hands and pulls. The blast door is not designed to be pulled. It is designed to stay exactly where it is under enormous external pressure, which is the same property that makes it possible to move it if you can get your leverage from inside the mechanism, not against the door face, but into the hydraulic housing, finding the specific points where the locking rods seat into the frame and convincing them. Through applied force and an amount of effort that she will feel in every part of her body tomorrow, to unseat. The first rod releases with a sound like a gunshot. Then the second. The door rises 30 centimeters and sticks. She drops to the floor and rolls under it without breaking stride, gets her feet under her on the other side, and reaches back through, one hand, blind, into the gap, finds his arm, and pulls. He gets his shoulders clear, his legs. The door drops behind them with a concussive impact that rattles her teeth. They are on the surface. Malachor's sky is the color of a bruise healing badly. The TIE Advanced sits where he left it, 40 meters north, its angular wings catching the amber light of a planet that has never had anything good happen on it. They cross the distance at a run, or the closest approximation of a run that either of them currently has available. The cockpit is 1 seat. She looks at it. He looks at her. Equipment bay, he says, aft of the pilot's compartment. It's pressurized. A breath. Barely. Behind them, a sound rises that has no precedent in either of their considerable experiences. Not an explosion, but a frequency. Sub-bass. The Kyber lattice of the temple finally releasing everything it has stored across centuries of dormancy in one sustained, building note. She folds herself into the equipment bay. He seals it from outside. She hears him drop into the cockpit and feels the ion engines ignite through the ship's frame before she hears them. A vibration in her spine, her palms, the soles of her feet. The TIE Advanced accelerates. Through the small viewport, barely the size of her hand, she watches Malachor's surface detonate behind them. Not a fireball, a release. A column of dark light driving upward into the bruise-colored sky. The temple becoming nothing, becoming less than nothing. The ancient superweapon finally doing what it was always meant to do and consuming itself. The ship punches through the upper atmosphere. The stars come out. She lets out a breath she has been holding, she suspects, for approximately 16 years. The planet has no name in any Imperial registry. Anakin found it 3 years ago during a patrol sweep he deliberately mislogged. A dead rock in the outer rim. Tectonically stable, minimal atmosphere but breathable in short exposures. No settlements, no strategic value, nothing that would make anyone look at it twice. He filed it under a sensor ghost and moved on. He has been filing things under sensor ghosts for longer than he likes to think about. The TIE Advanced sets down in a shallow canyon whose walls are the color of old rust. Wind moves through it in a low continuous tone, not unpleasant. Nothing else moves. Nothing else is here. He gets the equipment bay open from outside and she unfolds herself from it without complaint, which tells him her ankle is worse than she said. He files that too. The canyon provides shelter enough. He runs a line from the ship's life support auxiliary to the portable atmospheric processor he keeps in the equipment bay, part of a survival kit he assembled quietly. Over years, for reasons he never examined too directly. Now he knows what those reasons were. The processor hums to life and begins conditioning the air in the 3-meter radius around the ship's hull into something a human body can use indefinitely. He sits down on the canyon floor, with his back against the landing strut. He reaches up and removes what is left of the mask. It takes both hands and more effort than it should, because the fracture has warped the seal housing and the locking mechanism on the left side no longer releases cleanly. He works it free by increments, feeling the specific wrongness of each stuck component the way a mechanic feels it, not with frustration but with diagnostic attention, noting what will need to be rebuilt. The mask comes away. The air hits his face. He has not felt unfiltered air on his skin since Mustafar, which means he has not felt it in 16 years, and the sensation is so unfamiliar that his nervous system does not immediately know what to do with it. The temperature differential, the slight texture of particulate matter, the way it moves differently against skin than against durasteel. He breathes, without the vocoder, without the pressurized delivery system, just his lungs making their own decisions about the available air. It is harder than the suit. It is also the first real thing he has felt in 16 years. He does not look at Ahsoka. She looks at him. He knows because he can feel it. Not in the Force, not with any technique. Just the specific awareness of another person's full attention that you develop after years of being invisible to everyone around you. The stormtroopers don't look at him. The Moffs look past him. Palpatine looks through him. Ahsoka looks at him, the way she always did, the specific quality of attention that used to make him feel known and now makes him feel exposed in a way that is not entirely uncomfortable. "Say it," he says. A pause. "Say what?" "Whatever you're looking at." She is quiet for a moment. When she speaks, her voice is even. "You look tired, Anakin." The name lands differently every time she uses it. He has not identified why. He suspects it is simply because it is his. "I am tired," he says. She comes and sits across from him, close enough that the atmospheric processor's range covers both of them. She does not look away from his face, and he does not tell her to. She is cataloging the damage. He knows the look. She wore it in the field every time he took a hit she hadn't anticipated. And he lets her, because there is no version of the next several hours that does not require her to know exactly what she is working with. The burn scarring covers the left side of his face and most of his neck, thinning as it reaches the right jaw. His eyes are blue. She has seen them before, technically, but not since before everything. Not in a face that looked like this. Not hollowed out. Not carrying this specific weight. "I'm going to help your breathing," she says. "What I did in the temple, may I?" The formality of it surprises him. He spent 3 years giving orders to a girl who gave them right back. Somewhere in the intervening 16 years she learned to ask. "Yes," he says. Her hand settles at the back of his neck, between the cybernetic housing and the top of the suit's collar, where the nerve clusters that control his respiratory rhythm sit closest to the surface. He feels the force move through her touch, not a force push, not anything with direction, just presence. like a hand steadying the table. His next breath comes with 20% less effort. The one after that, the same. His lungs are not healed. They are the same lungs that have been failing by degrees since Mustafar. But the inflammation around the scar tissue eases incrementally, and the nerve pain that runs from his collarbone to his lower ribs steps back one level from where it usually lives. He closes his eyes. "Don't go to sleep," she says. "I'm not. You look like you are." "I'm resting my eyes." "That's what going to sleep sounds like, Anakin." He opens his eyes. She is watching him with an expression that is not quite a smile, and is not quite grief, and is somehow both simultaneously, the expression of someone finding a thing they were certain was gone, and not yet knowing what to do with having it back. He picks up the mask, and begins taking it apart. The work helps. It always has. His hands know what to do when his mind is too full. Find the broken thing. Find the cause of the breaking. Address it in the correct sequence. The mask's seal housing comes apart in pieces he lays out in order on the canyon floor. The vocal modulator is intact. The fracture is structural, not electronic. The outer shell is compromised, but the systems behind it are functional. He can rebuild this. He works. She heals, or the version of healing available to her, maintaining the light contact, sustaining the respiratory ease, occasionally adjusting the placement of her hand when she feels the nerve pain shift. They talk the way people talk when their hands are busy and there is no performance required. "After I left the Order," she begins, and then stops. Recalibrates. "After the trial. I couldn't go back. You know I couldn't go back. I know. I spent a long time being no one." A pause. It wasn't only bad, being no one, but it was lonely in a way I didn't have a word for yet. He examines a seal component, finds the stress fracture in it, sets it aside. And then? "Bail Organa found me." Eventually, her voice is careful around this, not because she is hiding anything from him, but because she has learned over years to be careful with his name. The network needed someone. Needed a fulcrum. "Fulcrum," he repeats. "A point of leverage," she says. "A fixed point that other things pivot around." He understands that. He has spent 16 years as someone else's fixed point and pivoted nothing in any direction he chose. "And now?" he asks. She considers the question with the seriousness it deserves. "Now I'm here. With you. On a planet with no name, helping you breathe. A beat. I find that I don't object to it." He fits two components back together, tests the seal, finds it holds. The work has a rhythm that settles something in his chest that the Force cannot reach. Then she says, "When does Luke destroy the Death Star?" He goes still. She waits. 3 years, he says. Approximately the Battle of Yavin is 3 years out. He sets down the component in his hands. He's 16 now. On Tatooine. The word Tatooine costs him something small and specific. With Owen and Beru. He's safe? For now. Yes, and Leia? Alderaan? 16. The same. He picks the component back up. His hands need something to do. Already working with the rebellion. Your rebellion. Though she doesn't have the formal title yet. They don't know each other. They don't know what they are. And they can't. She says. Not a question. An acknowledgement of the architecture they are standing inside. Not yet. Not until it's over. She is quiet for a moment, working through the same calculation he has already run 10,000 times in the dark hours of the past several years, in the moments between receiving orders and carrying them out. In the space where Darth Vader was supposed to exist, and Anakin Skywalker kept refusing to fully die. 3 years, she says finally. 3 years. Then we have work to do. He fits the last seal component into place and picks up the modulator. His hands are steady. Outside the canyon walls, the outer rim wind moves through in its low continuous tone, indifferent to the weight of what has just been decided. We have work to do, he agrees. He begins reassembling the mask. The seventh sister finds the comm relay first. This is not surprising. She has always been the faster thinker of the two, sharper politically. More dangerous in the specific way that people are dangerous when they understand the value of information over the value of action. She located the relay station on an asteroid mining outpost 3 systems from Malachor within 6 hours of escaping the temple collapse, which means she spent those 6 hours not panicking, not grieving, not processing anything, just calculating. The 8th brother arrives 3 hours later, which tells its own story. He has a gash along the left side of his head sealed with emergency bacta from his survival kit, and the way he holds his right shoulder says something beneath the armor is not aligned the way it should be. He does not mention either of these things. She does not ask. The relay station is unmanned, a dead Imperial listening post, decommissioned 2 years ago when the sector garrison consolidated operations, still powered by a residual solar tap that no one has bothered to shut down. The 7th sister has already bypassed the station's access protocols by the time he walks through the door. Her fingers are on the transmission panel. Her probe droid hovers at her shoulder, its photoreceptors cycling. "You're late," the 7th sister says, without turning. "Ship damage." His voice is flat. No elaboration. The voice of someone who does not explain himself as a rule and is not starting now. "Were you followed?" "Please." A dismissive gesture. "I swept the approach vector 3 times. He moves to the secondary console and runs his own sweep anyway. The 7th sister watches this and says nothing, which is its own form of respect. "You saw it," he says. Not a question. "I saw enough." His blade went down. The 8th brother's hands stop on the console. "I was on the upper level, north approach, and I saw him lower it. And then, the mask, a voice," the 7th sister says. Quietly, yes, the 2 of them sit with that for a moment. The 7th sister turns from the panel. Her helmet is clipped to her belt, her face open to the recycled air of the station, and her expression is the one she uses when she is running probability assessments, which is to say, it is almost no expression at all. "The question isn't what it means," she says. "The question is what it's worth. We report it to the Emperor." No hesitation. The 8th brother says it the way he does everything, directly, without examining the sides of the decision. "That's what we do." To the Emperor, the 7th sister repeats, as though tasting the words. "Yes, we could do that. We could transmit a report that Lord Vader lowered his weapon in front of a known rebel operative, that we heard what may have been an unmodulated voice from his vocoder, that we subsequently fled the collapsing temple independently and arrived here with no corroborating evidence, no recordings, no witnesses." She tilts her head. "How do you think that conversation ends for us?" He says nothing. "We are 2 Inquisitors who survived a mission where 3 were deployed and 1 did not make it out. We have no hard evidence of anything. What we have is an observation and a theory, and our theory implicates the Emperor's most powerful weapon." The 7th sister moves to the room's single viewport. The asteroid field beyond it drifts in slow, indifferent arcs. Palpatine does not reward Inquisitors who bring him uncomfortable theories without proof. He rewards Inquisitors who bring him proof. "Then we get proof," the 8th brother says. "That is one option." She turns back. "Or we get leverage." He opens his mouth. The door behind him comes off its housing. Not blown. Removed, the entire frame extracted from the wall in one clean pull, the durasteel screaming briefly, and then going quiet as the piece is set aside with a precision that is somehow more frightening than violence. The 7th sister's probe droid spins toward the opening and dies mid-spin, its photoreceptors going dark before it completes the rotation. Vader stands in the doorway. Not quite Vader. The mask is rebuilt, but the repair is visible, slightly wrong angles at the left seal, the surface finish imperfect where new components meet old housing. He has made himself functional. He has not bothered making himself seamless. Ahsoka Tano steps in behind him. The 8th brother moves before the 7th sister does. A different reflex order than their usual, combat instinct overriding calculation, his lightsaber igniting in the same motion as his turn. The 7th sister is half a second behind him, red blade answering red. Both of them reading the geometry of the room in the same instant. 2 exits. Now 1. 2 targets. The console behind them, its transmission ready, the message queued. One of them needs to reach it. That is the only play remaining. They split without speaking. The eighth brother takes Vader. He does this the way he does most things, without hesitation and without strategy, launching forward on the assumption that speed and aggression will be sufficient. They have been sufficient against most opponents he has encountered. He drives in hard with an overhand strike that has ended fights before the other person finished raising their guard. Vader doesn't raise his guard. He intercepts the strike at its apex with a single-handed catch, absorbs the entire force output, and redirects it into the floor so efficiently that the eighth brother stumbles past him and has to break his own momentum to keep from hitting the wall. He recovers, goes again, different angle. Vader tracks him without urgency. This is the most frightening thing about fighting Vader. The patience, the sense that he is not reacting to you, but observing you. Waiting for the thing you will inevitably do wrong. The eighth brother has heard this from others, and dismissed it as exaggeration. He is not dismissing it now. He changes his approach, goes lower, changes it again. Vader adjusts each time with the minimal movement necessary, never more, as though the combat is primarily an exercise in data collection. The eighth brother drives a force push, raw pressure, blunt and overwhelming, the technique that has cracked walls and thrown speeder bikes. Vader leans into it and redirects it sideways, and the eighth brother's own momentum carries him into the edge of the console. His shoulder connects, the damaged shoulder, and the pain costs him half a second he cannot afford. Vader's hand comes up. The force clamp catches him at the chest rather than the wrist, a full-body compression, not a joint hold, locking every muscle simultaneously. He strains against it with everything he has and produces no meaningful result. The lightsaber is still in his hand, but his arm will not move. "You saw something on Malachor," Vader says. His rebuilt vocoder is slightly different than it was before, a fraction rougher, something in the modulator not quite restored to factory specification. It sounds, the eighth brother realizes, more human. Whether that is an accident of the repair or a choice, he cannot tell. You haven't decided yet what to do with it. The eighth brother says nothing. Straining, the seventh sister decided when she found this station. You haven't, because deciding requires thinking about it, and thinking about it means acknowledging what it implies. He releases the force hold. The eighth brother does not run. There is nowhere to run. You are a direct person. That has value. It also means you are standing in a situation that does not reward directness. And some part of you already knows it. Then what are you offering? He says. Nothing, Vader says. I'm telling you what you already know. Across the room, the seventh sister is faster than Ahsoka expected. Not faster than Ahsoka, but faster than the seventh sister has any right to be in a confined space against an opponent she has never fought, which means she has done her research. Which means she knows exactly who Ahsoka Tano is, and has prepared accordingly. Her fighting style is aggressive adaptive, constantly probing for information, and she finds the ankle in the first exchange, one precise strike to the floor that forces Ahsoka to wait it, reads the half-second hesitation, and files it. She goes for it on the second exchange. Ahsoka pulls her foot back and gives her the ankle, lets the strike land, absorbs the flare of pain without changing her expression, and uses the seventh sister's committed forward momentum to redirect her into the console. The console that has the unsent transmission cued on it. The seventh sister hits it. Her elbow strikes the transmission panel. For one suspended instant, both of them look at the screen. Ahsoka reaches past her and closes the cue. The seventh sister goes very still. "How long have you known?" she asks. "About the ankle?" "Since the second exchange." Ahsoka steps back. "About the transmission?" "Since I came through the door." A long pause. The red blade is still lit between them, held now more from habit than intent. "You're going to kill us," the seventh sister says. "We're going to give you a choice," Ahsoka says. "That's different. They don't take the choice." Ahsoka does not blame them for it. She understands the calculus. Two inquisitors who have seen what they have seen, carrying knowledge with no safe place to put it, in a galaxy where the Emperor's reach has no reliable edges. A choice requires somewhere to go. They have nowhere. The seventh sister makes her move first, as she has made every move first. It is clean and fast and completely anticipated. The eighth brother follows, and that too is anticipated, and the ending is quick. The comm relay's transmission queue is empty. The relay itself takes Anakin 40 seconds to dismantle beyond recovery. They stand in the silence afterward, in the relay station's recycled air, looking at the floor. "Anakin," she says. "I know. The word carries everything. The necessity of it, and the cost of the necessity, and the specific grief of a man who is trying to be something other than what 16 years made him, and finding the distance longer than expected." He sets down the last component of the relay. "I know." She doesn't offer him absolution. She didn't the first time either. She waits with him in it until he is ready to leave. The Imperial Palace at midday is the color of ambition. White marble, black accents, the geometry of every corridor designed to make the person walking it feel appropriately small. Anakin has walked these halls for 16 years and has never felt small in them, which Palpatine has always found mildly interesting and never fully examined. He should have examined it. The throne room anteroom is empty when Anakin arrives. This is deliberate. Palpatine clears the space before audiences that matter, removes the witnesses, creates the intimacy of a room that contains only the two of them, and whatever the Force carries between them. Anakin has always understood this as a form of control. He understands it now as something closer to habit. Palpatine has been doing this so long he no longer distinguishes between the tools and the rituals. The doors open. Palpatine is standing at the viewport when Anakin enters, which is also deliberate. The Emperor does not sit for things he wants to appear casual about. The standing posture says, "This is not a formal audience. This is a conversation between allies, you may relax." None of those things are true. Anakin has known that for 16 years. Now he knows it differently. "Lord Vader," Palpatine says, without turning, "You've returned. As you see, my master." Later than expected. A pause with texture in it. Malakor's destruction registered on long-range sensors 6 days ago. I had begun to wonder. The damage to my ship required field repairs. This is true. Anakin built the truth into every layer of the cover story precisely because Palpatine's primary instrument is the detection of false notes, and the best way to produce no false notes is to play as many true ones as possible. The hyperdrive motivator took shrapnel from the temple's detonation. I made repairs and waited for confirmation that the blast radius had fully dispersed before breaking atmosphere. Palpatine turns from the viewport. His face is pleasant. His eyes are doing something entirely different. "The Inquisitors," he says. Anakin reaches into the folds of his cloak and produces 3 lightsabers. He sets them on the low table between them with the care of a man presenting evidence, not trophies. "The 5th brother was killed by Maul before my arrival," he says. "The 7th sister and the 8th brother encountered Tano in the temple's lower levels during the structural collapse." He lets the pause breathe exactly as long as a man reporting facts would let it breathe. Not a fraction longer. "I recovered what remained of their weapons from the debris." Palpatine looks at the lightsabers. He does not touch them. "And Tano," he says. "Dead." Anakin keeps his eyes level. "I confirmed it personally before the temple's final detonation sealed the lower chambers." A silence. It is the kind of silence Palpatine manufactures with precision. Not empty, but loaded. A space he leaves open and watches to see what a person fills it with. Guilty men fill it with elaboration. Frightened men fill it with reassurance. Anakin fills it with nothing, because Darth Vader has never elaborated and has never been frightened, and he is not elaborating now. "Show me," Palpatine says. The probe is not a request. Anakin feels it begin at the edges of his consciousness. The distinctive pressure of another Force user's will against the boundary of his mind, delicate and thorough, the way a man checks a locked door not by forcing it but by testing each panel for give. Palpatine has been doing this to him for 16 years, and Anakin has always felt it as an intrusion he could not refuse. Now he opens the door himself. This is the mechanism. This is what Ahsoka did not fully understand until he explained it in the canyon on the dead planet, and what she understood completely once he had. He is not constructing a false memory for Palpatine to find. He is not hiding behind a wall. He is giving Palpatine exactly what dark side obedience feels like from the inside. And he can do this with total fidelity, because it is not a performance. It is a memory. He lived inside that feeling for 16 years, learned its texture from every angle, could reproduce it in the dark without thinking. He remembers the way rage sits differently than grief. He remembers the specific quality of loyalty to Palpatine that is not love and not respect, but something more like gravity. The acknowledgement of a force you cannot escape and have stopped trying to. He remembers what it felt like to stand in this room and mean every word. He gives Palpatine all of that. And underneath it, in the place that Palpatine's probe reaches for and finds apparently empty, the place where doubt and divided loyalty would live if they existed, Anakin has placed something he discovered only recently. In the canyon, rebuilding the mask with his hands while Ahsoka maintained contact at the back of his neck. Grief is a dark side emotion. Palpatine taught him that, used it to build him. The grief that Anakin carries. For Padme, for the younglings, for the man he was before Mustafar, that grief is real, and it reads to Palpatine's probe as exactly what it appears to be. The bedrock darkness of a Sith Lord's foundation, intact and operational. The probe finds it, and is satisfied by it. This is the cruelest irony Anakin has encountered in a life that has not been short of them. The very thing Palpatine built to destroy him is now the thing protecting him. The pressure recedes. Palpatine moves to his chair and settles into it with the ease of a man who has just confirmed something he did not truly doubt. His fingers lace together. His expression is the one he uses for approval, warm, paternal, the expression that used to mean something to Anakin, and now reads as legible and hollow as a protocol droid running a hospitality subroutine. "You have done well, Lord Vader," he says. "Thank you, my master." Tano was a loose end that has troubled me for some time. He tilts his head slightly. The confirmation of her death is a relief. For both of us, I think. The both of us lands with a hook in it, a small probe of its own, not force, just language, just the technique of a man who has been reading people for centuries and never stops. He is watching to see if the mention of Ahsoka Tano produces a ripple. Anakin produces no ripple. She was a ghost, Anakin says. Ghosts are better laid to rest. Palpatine regards him. A long moment, the kind that lesser men mistake for silence. "There is one matter worth discussing," he says. "Maul. He escaped. He did." Something moves across Palpatine's face that is not quite displeasure, and not quite anything else. He took a TIE fighter from the temple's exterior docking port. The craft was tracked to the outer rim and lost at the Mandalore system boundary. A pause. "Maul is a complication I will address in due course. What concerns me more presently is the question of what he observed before his departure. He was occupied with the Inquisitors in the upper levels," Anakin says. "He had no line of sight to Tano's position when I engaged her." "You are certain?" "I killed her, my master. If Maul had seen anything worth reporting, he would have found a way to use it already." Another silence. This one slightly different in texture from the last. Palpatine is running a calculation. Anakin can feel the quality of attention shift, the way a room changes when the person in it moves from evaluation to conclusion. "Yes," Palpatine says finally. "Yes, that is consistent." He unfolds his hands. "There is a situation developing in the Lothal sector requiring your personal attention. Admiral Constantine has proven inadequate to the task of suppressing the local cell. I need them eliminated, not managed." "I will leave within the hour," Anakin says. He collects the 3 lightsabers from the table and returns them to his cloak. This too is deliberate. Leaving them would imply they meant something to him beyond evidence. Taking them back implies administrative tidiness. Palpatine watches the gesture and finds nothing in it. Anakin turns to leave. "Lord Vader." He stops, does not turn. "You seem..." Palpatine pauses, and it is the most frightening pause of the entire audience. The one Anakin felt coming from the moment the probe receded. Different, since Malachor. A beat. One breath. The temple's dark side resonance was significant, Anakin says. "I required time to recalibrate." He does not wait for a response. He walks to the doors and through them, and the white marble corridor swallows him. And he does not alter his stride or his posture or his breathing until he has rounded 2 corners, and confirmed with the Force that no probe droid trails him, and no guard has broken from a standard post. Then he stops. He stands in the corridor of the Imperial Palace, alone in the way that Darth Vader is always alone, and he takes one slow breath through the rebuilt mask. The lightsabers in his cloak are lighter than they should be. He does not examine this feeling. He files it under things that are true and costly and necessary. Then he walks on. 3 levels below the throne room, in the private office suite adjacent to the Imperial Communications Hub, Palpatine sits alone. His fingers are laced together again. On his desk, a single data screen displays a file he opened 3 minutes ago and has not yet read. It is a behavioral analysis compiled by a droid assigned to passive observation of Lord Vader's conduct over the past 14 months, a standing order, never communicated, never acknowledged. One of perhaps 40 such orders he has maintained across various intelligence assets, tracking various persons of interest. A precaution, nothing more. He has not read the file because he does not need to yet. He is simply aware that it exists. He lets the thought settle into the architecture of his patience, and then turns to the matter of the Lothal sector, which requires his attention and will receive it completely. The file remains open on the screen behind him. Bail Organa receives the news of Ahsoka Tano's survival the way he receives all news that matters, in private, without witnesses, with his face doing nothing at all until he has decided what it should do. She tells him in his private office on Alderaan, in the hour before dawn when the mountains outside the window are shapes rather than colors. She tells him she is alive. She tells him Vader is dead. She tells him she has access to something she cannot fully explain yet, a source, deeply placed, whose intelligence she will vouch for personally, and whose identity she will not disclose under any circumstances. Bail is quiet for a long time. Then he says, "Is the source reliable?" "Yes," she says. "Are you certain?" "More certain than I have been of anything since I left the Order." He looks at her for another moment with the specific expression of a man who knows he is not receiving the full truth, and has decided that the portion he is receiving is sufficient. He has always been good at that calculation. It is one of the things she trusts about him. "Fulcrum," he says. "Still," she confirms. He nods once and reaches for his comm. The first piece of intelligence arrives 6 weeks later. It comes through 3 cutouts. A dead drop on Atollon, a courier who doesn't know what she's carrying, a cipher that Ahsoka changes every transmission. And it contains the patrol schedule for an Imperial supply convoy moving through the Archeon Nebula. Corridor, timing, escort composition, the specific rotation gap in the fighter screen that opens for 11 minutes at the convoy's midpoint. General Dodonna calls it the cleanest intelligence he has received in 4 years of running rebel operations. The convoy raid nets enough weapons-grade Tabana gas to supply 3 rebel squadrons for a year. No rebel casualties. 2 escort fighters disabled rather than destroyed, because the intelligence was precise enough that the rebellion didn't need to fight. They needed only to be in the right place at the right moment. Ahsoka sits in her bunk on Atollon that night and does not celebrate. She thinks about Anakin, alone in Vader's armor on the bridge of a Star Destroyer, filing a report about a convoy ambush he engineered. She thinks about what it costs a person to perform a role that thoroughly, for that long, without a single person in their daily life knowing who they actually are. She has a version of that knowledge herself. But his version is heavier. His version has no hours off. She closes her eyes and files the thought where she files the others, the collection of things that are true and costly and not currently actionable, and goes to sleep. 7 months in. A garrison on Ord Mantell. The intelligence, a shift rotation with a 6-hour gap in perimeter coverage, northwest quadrant, coordinates precise to 10 meters. The garrison houses a Kyber crystal processing facility, whose output feeds directly to a weapons development program Ahsoka does not have the full picture of, but which Anakin has flagged as a priority disruption target. The rebellion hits the facility during the gap, 45 minutes in and out. The processing equipment is destroyed. The crystal stockpile is seized. 3 weeks after the raid, a rebel analyst named Vasmer pulls Ahsoka aside at a briefing and tells her, quietly, that the Kyber output from the Ord Mantell facility was the single largest component supplier for a construction project of unknown scale in the Outer Rim. The disruption has pushed the project's completion timeline back by an estimated 8 to 14 months. Ahsoka nods and thanks him and carries this information back to her bunk and sits with it for a long time. 8 to 14 months. On a timeline already measured in years, 8 to 14 months is the distance between a Death Star that exists and a Death Star that doesn't, and Luke Skywalker is 16 years old on Tatooine, growing into someone who will need those months to become who he needs to be. She allows herself one moment of something that is not quite relief and not quite triumph. Then she writes the next dead drop. 14 months in. The rebellion moves. Atalan to Yavin, a larger base, better infrastructure, more personnel, the logistics of a growing operation that has begun to outpace the resources of its original home. Ahsoka coordinates the move with Bail from a transport running dark, and in the process meets, formally and for the first time, a senator from Alderaan named Leia Organa, who is 17 years old and moves through a command briefing room with the specific quality of authority that belongs either to someone born to it or someone who has chosen it so completely that the distinction no longer matters. Ahsoka watches her for approximately 6 seconds. She does not allow herself to watch for longer, because 6 seconds is already longer than is safe. Leia catches her looking. "Commander Tano," she says, with the precise formality of someone who has been briefed on the name and has opinions about the person. "Senator," Ahsoka says, "your father speaks highly of you. My father speaks highly of everyone he's decided to trust." A beat. He doesn't decide that quickly. "No," Ahsoka agrees. He doesn't. Something in Leia's expression shifts, a fractional recalibration, the look of someone revising a preliminary assessment. She moves on to the next briefing item, and Ahsoka does not watch her go. She spends the rest of the day being extremely productive and thinking about nothing in particular. 22 months in. The closest call yet. Mon Mothma comes to Ahsoka's quarters on Yavin in the evening, with a data pad and a very specific quality of stillness. She sets the pad on the table and says, "I want to ask you something directly, and I would like a direct answer." "All right," Ahsoka says. "The intelligence we've been receiving through your source." Mon Mothma looks at the pad. "In the past 22 months, it has been accurate to within a margin of error smaller than anything our own network has achieved in 6 years of operation." She pauses. "Not approximately accurate. Not mostly accurate. Accurate in the way that someone accurate at that level is accurate only when they have access to the actual decision-making process." She looks up. "Ahsoka, who is your source?" The silence between them is the longest Ahsoka has maintained in 22 months. "Someone who wants the Empire to end," she says. "Someone who has more reasons than either of us to want that and cannot be in this room to say so." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you." Mon Mothma looks at her for a long time. She is one of the 3 or 4 people alive whose judgment Ahsoka genuinely respects, and being looked at with that judgment is not a comfortable experience. "Are we being used?" Mon Mothma asks. "Is there a play here we're not seeing? Are victories serving someone else's larger purpose?" "No." Ahsoka holds the woman's gaze. "The Source wants the same outcome we want. I will stake everything I have on that." "You already are," Mon Mothma says. "Yes," Ahsoka says. "I know." Another silence. Then Mon Mothma picks up the datapad and stands. "The next intelligence package," she says. "I want it routed through a secondary verification protocol before action is taken." "Understood. Not because I doubt you." She pauses at the door. "Because if your source is who I think they might be, in the broadest possible terms, the category of person who could produce intelligence of this precision, then protecting them means protecting the verification chain. No single point of failure." She leaves. Ahsoka sits with the datapad she was reviewing before Mon Mothma arrived, and does not read it, and thinks about a man on the bridge of a Star Destroyer who has been a single point of failure for 22 months and carries that weight the way he carries all weight, without showing it, without distributing it, without ever once asking anyone to notice. She writes the next dead drop that night, hidden in the cipher, in the layer below the intelligence itself. She adds 4 words that are not part of the protocol and that will mean nothing to anyone who does not know what they are looking at. Still here. Still holding. 2 years. 7 months in. Yavin, the Death Star's completion registers across Imperial comm channels simultaneously. A burst of encrypted celebration from construction command that the rebellion intercepts and cannot yet fully decrypt, but understands well enough. Ahsoka is in the operations center when it comes through. She watches Dodonna's face process the information and emerge on the other side of it, looking older. The room is very quiet. Ahsoka's comm unit registers a dead drop retrieval notification, the system she and Anakin use flagging an incoming package. She reads it in the corridor outside. Alone, the operations center noise a low current behind the sealed door. The message is 2 words. It's time. She stands in the corridor of the Yavin base and lets the 2 words land in her chest where they belong, and she allows herself exactly the amount of feeling that the moment deserves, which is considerable. Then she goes to find Bail Organa. The Death Star briefing takes place in a room designed to make its own size felt. Anakin has attended dozens of Imperial command briefings in rooms like this: the high ceilings, the central holotank, the ranked officers arranged in the precise geometry of a hierarchy that exists to make each person present acutely aware of where they stand within it. He stands at the front. He always stands at the front. This has not changed. What has changed is what he is looking at. The holotank displays the Battle of Yavin approach corridors, the Death Star's equatorial trench, the thermal exhaust port, 2 meters wide, that someone on the rebel side has identified as the station's single exploitable vulnerability, a fact that Admiral Mahdi is currently explaining to the assembled officers with the specific confidence of a man who does not believe the explanation he is giving. Mahdi thinks it is irrelevant. Mahdi thinks the station is invincible. Anakin stands at the front of the room and listens to Mahdi explain why the Death Star cannot be destroyed, and keeps his face entirely still. The rebel fleet's composition reaches him through back channels 12 hours before the battle. 30 snub fighters. X-wings and Y-wings, the backbone of what Dodonna has assembled. Small, fast. Designed for exactly the kind of precision run the exhaust port requires. Anakin reviews the roster in his private quarters, with the door sealed and the surveillance systems running a loop he installed 3 years ago during a routine maintenance cycle that no one thought to supervise. He goes through the pilot names methodically. Red Squadron. Gold Squadron. He reads each name with the same flat attention, the same deliberate evenness, until he reaches the 7th name in Red Squadron's manifest and his eyes stop moving. Red 5. Luke Skywalker. He sets the datapad down on the desk. He picks it up again. He sets it down. Luke is 19. He has been flying since he was old enough to reach the controls of a T-16 in the Tatooine canyons, which Anakin knows because he has read every peripheral intelligence report that mentioned the Lars homestead in the past 3 years, with an attention to detail that would have alarmed any analyst who noticed it. He knows Luke flies like Anakin Skywalker flew at 19. By instinct, by feel, with a relationship to his instruments that is more conversation than calculation. He knows this the way you know things that live in your bones rather than your memory. He knows Luke is going to make the shot. He also knows that the Empire's entire fighter complement is going to be trying to kill him before he gets there. He closes the surveillance loop, stands up and goes to the hangar. The TIE Advanced is fueled and ready. His own fighter, his personal craft, the one with the bent solar panel he has never reported, the one the ground crew has learned not to mention, the one that is available for launch within 4 minutes of his arrival, regardless of what else is happening on the deck. He does a walk-around inspection that is genuine rather than procedural, checking the deflector systems and the lateral thrusters with his own hands, rather than trusting the checklist. D1 Chief Petty Officer 10 watches from a respectful distance and does not ask questions, because in 3 years of working the flight deck he has learned that Lord Vader does his own inspections, for reasons that are not explained, and does not require conversation during them. Anakin runs his hand along the port wing. He thinks, I am about to fly into a battle to protect my son from the Empire that I have spent 3 years pretending to serve. He thinks, there is no version of this that is not insane. He gets in the fighter. The battle begins the way battles begin, with a quality of unreality that sharpens into absolute clarity the moment the first shot is fired. Anakin launches from the Death Star's hangar bay 18 minutes before Red Squadron begins its attack run, joining the TIE screen as it deploys against the incoming Rebel fighters. 2 wingmen fall in beside him. He notes their designations, their positions, their likely response times, and begins the calculation he has been running since he read Red 5's name on the roster. The Rebel fighters hit the trench approach in 2 waves. Gold Squadron goes first, Y-wings, slower, carrying the initial assault, and the Imperial response converges on them with the overwhelming force of a station that has been waiting for exactly this. Anakin watches Gold leaders run from 15 kilometers out, tracking the Y-wings as they enter the trench and tracking the interception vectors simultaneously, and makes adjustments. Small ones. Invisible ones. He drifts 3 degrees to port during a targeting pass, which redirects his wingman's firing solution away from Gold 2 without appearing to. He feeds a targeting recalculation through the shared TIE network, a sensor ghost, a ghost he has generated himself from the TIE's own systems, that pulls 2 defense turrets' attention to a quadrant that contains nothing. The attention of 2 turrets, for 40 seconds, is 40 seconds of reduced fire on the trench approach. Gold Squadron takes losses anyway. He cannot stop all of it. He can only erode the margins. Then Red Squadron begins its run. He finds Luke's X-Wing by feel before he finds it on the scope. This is not mysticism. It is the Force doing what the Force does when a person stops arguing with it, presenting information through channels that predate language. He knows the fighter the way he knew Ahsoka's footwork on Malachor, the way he knows his own hands. The specific signature of that X-Wing in the Force is so familiar it aches. He moves to intercept. This is the part that requires the most precision, because it must look like pursuit. The 2 TIEs on his wing must believe they are executing a standard interception run, and the Rebel pilots in the trench must believe they are being hunted rather than escorted. The margin between those 2 perceptions is narrow and demands constant calibration. Red 2 and Red 3 are flying cover for Luke's approach. They are good pilots, steady, disciplined, maintaining their positions under fire with the kind of composure that only exists in people who have made peace with the possibility of dying and decided to fly anyway. Anakin respects this. He also needs them to stay alive long enough to do their jobs. He creates interference in the targeting data feeding to the Imperial turrets tracking Red 2 and Red 3. Not jamming. Jamming would be noticed. Something subtler. A vibration introduced into the targeting sensor's refresh cycle that introduces a half-second lag in the lock acquisition. A half-second is not nothing, in a trench, at those speeds. Red 2 stays in the fight. Red 3 takes a hit and peels off, injured rather than destroyed. Anakin files the margin not wide enough, and moves deeper into the trench. The X-Wing ahead of him is flying unlike anything else in the battle. Every other pilot in the trench, on both sides, is operating within the constraints of what a pilot can do, reading instruments, processing data, making decisions in the window between stimulus and response. Luke is doing something different. Luke has, somewhere in the last minutes of this run, stopped processing and started being. The control's an extension of something that has no panel readout. The shot ahead of him already located in a place that predates aiming. Anakin knows this because he flew like this at Naboo when he was 9 years old. He feels the moment Luke releases the targeting computer, a small shift in the X-Wing's signature in the Force, the difference between a thing being directed and a thing being allowed. He knows what it means. He knows what happens next. He also knows Vader's wingmen are in position for a clean kill shot on Red 5, and has approximately 4 seconds to prevent it without appearing to prevent it. He pushes the Force outward, a disruption aimed at the space between the wingmen and the trench wall, the kind that reads on any pilot's instruments as turbulence. They adjust. 3 degrees of pitch on the lead wingman, 4 on the trail. It costs them their targeting window. Then something new enters the fight. He feels it before he sees it. A ship dropping in at the trench's mouth. A freighter by its mass signature, moving at an angle that has nothing tactical about it, and everything personal. He does not know who is flying it. He does not need to. He tracks the new ship's firing solution in the same instant it opens fire, and his 2 wingmen are gone. Not deflected, not sent off course, but removed entirely, their TAs tumbling away from the trench in opposite directions. The force disruption had already cost them the window. The shot that follows simply finishes the geometry. Then, Luke's shot happens. He feels it through the force before the sensors register it, the proton torpedoes entering the exhaust shaft, the specific quality of an event that cannot be undone. He pulls the TIE Advanced into a climb, the concussive wave catching his ship and throwing it tumbling into open space. And in the tumbling he glimpses the Death Star's surface below him, and then the expanding light of the detonation, and then nothing but stars. He stabilizes the fighter. His hands on the controls are steady. His breathing, regulated by the rebuilt mask, is steady. Everything external is exactly as steady as Darth Vader's external presentation has always been. He thinks, in Anakin Skywalker's voice, to a boy in an X-Wing peeling away into the black, "I've got you. I've always had you." The thought goes nowhere. It has no receiver. It is not a transmission. He lets it exist anyway, in the place where things that cannot be said still need to be true. Then he turns the TIE Advanced away from the debris field and into the dark, alone, carrying the weight of a victory no one will ever know he helped win. The summons arrives 3 weeks after Yavin. It comes through standard channels, a priority transmission from the Imperial Palace, routed through the Executor's communications array, formatted as a routine audience request. The language is formal and unremarkable. The timing is not. Anakin reads it twice. Then he reads it a third time, looking for the thing underneath the language, the specific shape of what is not said, which has always been more informative than what is. Palpatine does not summon him through standard channels when the matter is routine. Routine matters are handled through intermediaries, through the chain of command, through the apparatus of imperial governance that exists precisely so Palpatine's direct attention is reserved for things that require it. This is formatted as routine. It is not routine. He thinks about the behavioral analysis file, the one on the data screen behind Palpatine 3 years ago, the one open but unread, the one he felt rather than saw as he walked out of the throne room after Malachor. He has been thinking about that file at intervals across 3 years of careful, meticulous, impeccably performed service, and now the interval has apparently ended. He sends Ahsoka the dead drop notification in their standard format. 2 words, this time, that fall outside the protocol in the same layer where she once sent "still here." Still holding. He knows. The Imperial Palace is the same color of ambition it has always been. Anakin walks its corridors with the same stride he has always used, measured, deliberate, the stride of a man who belongs in any space he occupies and has never needed permission for it. The stormtroopers at their posts register his passage and do not move. The officers he passes find sudden interest in their datapads. He notes, without visible reaction, that the Royal Guard complement at the throne room approach is double the standard posting. He notes, also without reaction, that the 2 guard stations flanking the anteroom are manned by figures who are not the standard crimson-armored sentinels, but something else. Dark-robed, still, with the specific quality of stillness that belongs to force sensitives rather than soldiers. Not inquisitors. Something older. He walks through the anteroom doors. The throne room has been reconfigured. This is the first true signal. Palpatine does not rearrange furniture for routine audiences, and the change is not subtle. The central space has been cleared completely, the low table gone, the ambient lighting reduced by half so that the only strong illumination comes from above the throne itself. The effect is deliberate. The room now contains brightness in exactly one location, and shadow everywhere else. 6 royal guards flank the throne in a spacing that is not ceremonial but tactical. 2 more dark-robed figures stand at the far wall. Palpatine is seated. His hands are folded in his lap. His expression is the warm, paternal one. "Lord Vader," he says, "thank you for coming so promptly." "My master." Anakin stops at the room's center. His lightsaber is at his hip, as it always is. He does not reach for it. Reaching for it would be the last thing he ever did. In this room, in this configuration. "You wish to see me?" "I did." Palpatine tilts his head slightly. 3 years is a long time, my friend. I find I have missed our conversations. Anakin says nothing. Missing conversations is not a thing Palpatine does. This is not that kind of statement. Sit, Palpatine says. There is no chair. The Battle of Yavin, Palpatine says, in the tone of a man raising a topic he finds mildly interesting. A significant loss. Yes, my master. The Death Star represented 20 years of development. The Kyber infrastructure alone, a slight pause. Irreplaceable, in the short term. The rebellion got fortunate, Anakin says. A design vulnerability that should have been caught during the engineering review. I have identified the officer responsible. Yes. Palpatine's eyes do not change. You filed a thorough report. I read it with great interest. He unfolds his hands and folds them again, a gesture so small it should be meaningless. I read all your reports with great interest, Lord Vader. I always have. You write them with exceptional clarity. The quality of his attention sharpens. Over the past 34 months, Palpatine continues, in the same pleasant conversational register, I have had cause to review a number of your reports against operational outcomes. An interesting analytical exercise. He pauses. The Archeon convoy ambush. The Ord Mantell facility raid. The Atollon sector patrol gaps that the rebel fleet exploited during their relocation. The targeting anomalies reported by your wingmen during the Yavin trench engagement. He lets each item land separately. Each incident, reviewed in isolation, carries a plausible explanation. Reviewed collectively, he stops. Lets the unfinished sentence do its work. I don't control rebel operational planning, Anakin says. No, Palpatine agrees. You don't. He stands. The movement is unhurried, almost gentle. The movement of a very old man rising from his chair, except that Palpatine's age has never once made him slow. But you do control the reporting chain that feeds my strategic assessments. And a man who controls information controls outcomes, Lord Vader, without ever appearing to do so. The dark-robed figures at the far wall move 2 steps forward. The doors behind Anakin seal. He hears the locking mechanism engage and tracks the guard spacing in his peripheral vision simultaneously, and understands in the space of one breath that the room's reconfiguration was not atmospheric. It was architectural. Every position in the room has been chosen in advance. He is standing in the center of a geometry that was designed around him. Give me your weapon, Palpatine says. Not a request. The words carry force behind them. Not a compulsion, exactly, but pressure. The weight of years of obedience pressed into 4 words as a reminder of what Anakin is supposed to be. He unclips the lightsaber and holds it out. Palpatine takes it from his hand and sets it on the throne's armrest, 12 meters away. 12 meters might as well be 12 parsecs in this room with this configuration around him. Now, Palpatine says, we will talk honestly. For the first time in some years, I think. The Force lightning comes without additional preamble. This is what it actually feels like. Every nerve in his body firing simultaneously in a direction nerves are not designed to fire. The suit, built to insulate him from external electrical discharge, handles the first second, absorbs and distributes the charge across its internal grounding system. The second second, the charge saturates the grounding system. The third second, it begins finding the paths of least resistance into the body inside the suit. The cybernetic interfaces. The neural connection points where flesh meets durasteel at his shoulder joints, his hip joints, the base of his spine. These are the places the lightning finds, because these are the places where the insulation is thinnest. He does not make a sound. This is a decision, not a reflex. He has decided, in the 3 seconds it takes to understand what is happening. That sound is information, and he will not give Palpatine any more information than he must. He locks his knees and stays upright, and takes the lightning the way he has taken all pain since Mustafar, by filing it, categorizing it, refusing to let it be the loudest thing in the room. Palpatine stops, studying him. You are still standing, he observes, almost admiringly. Yes, Anakin says. His voice through the modulator is even. This costs him something he will not think about until later. The Tano question, Palpatine says. I was willing to accept your account of Malachor. I wanted to accept it. You have been invaluable in certain respects, and I have given you more latitude than I give most because of that. A pause. But the pattern, Lord Vader. You understand that I cannot ignore a pattern. The lightning comes again. Longer this time. He thinks about Ahsoka, not strategically. There is no strategy available to him in this moment. Pinned in the center of this room with his weapon on an armrest 12 meters away, and his nervous system conducting an argument he is losing. He thinks about her in the specific, involuntary way that the mind reaches for the thing that matters most when the body stops being reliable. He thinks about the canyon on the dead planet, her hand at the back of his neck, the quality of attention she directed at his face without apology or performance. He thinks about still here, still holding. He thinks about the ankle she filed and never mentioned. He thinks she got the message. He thinks she will come or she won't. And either way, this is the moment the 3 years have been building toward, and he is not going to give Palpatine a single word that costs her anything. The lightning stops again. His knees have not buckled. This surprises him slightly. You are remarkably resilient, Palpatine says. He is moving now, circling, the orbit of a man who is both evaluating and enjoying the evaluation. But resilience has a threshold. Every system does. He stops. Tell me about the informant. Anakin raises his head. There is no informant, he says. Palpatine looks at him for a long moment. His expression has changed, the warm paternal register gone, replaced by something that has no pretense behind it. This is the face Palpatine wears when there is no one to perform for. It is, in its way, more honest than anything else about him. Then you have been doing it alone, Palpatine says. For 3 years. Alone, I don't know what you think I've been doing. Yes, Palpatine says quietly. You do. He raises his hand. This time, the lightning does not stop. Anakin drives his will against his knees, against the scream building in his chest, against the specific agony of neural interface points conducting charge directly into nerve clusters that have no insulation left, and finds, in the space where a Sith Lord's rage is supposed to live, something quieter and more durable. He finds the thing that has been there since the canyon. Since the dead planet. Since an ankle filed and never mentioned, and a hand at the back of his neck and 4 words in a cipher layer that were not part of any protocol. He finds it and holds it and does not make a sound. His knees begin to go. He catches himself. Once, the effort costs him something structural, something in the suit's left leg servo, and the next strike will not find the same resistance. Palpatine raises his hand higher. The doors at the far end of the throne room blow off their housing. The doors do not explode. They are removed, both of them simultaneously, extracted from their housing with a precision that suggests the person on the other side understood exactly how the locking mechanism worked, and chose to defeat it through force rather than finesse as a deliberate statement. The durasteel frames screech once, briefly, and then both doors travel 12 meters through the throne room air and embed themselves in the far wall, with an impact that shakes the floor. In the space where the doors were, Ahsoka Tano stands. She is not in the white robes she wore on Malachor. She is in dark traveling clothes, practical and unadorned. The clothes of someone who has been moving fast through hostile space and did not stop to change. Her montrals are marked with 3 years of new lines. Her face carries the specific quality of a person who has already run the calculation for this room and arrived. Both white blades ignite simultaneously. The sound they make is different from any other lightsaber in the room. Cleaner. Higher. A tone that exists in a register the red blades don't reach. In the reduced lighting of the throne room, the white light expands to fill the space in a way the crimson never did, and for one suspended moment the entire geometry of the room reconfigures around her. Palpatine's hand drops. He looks at her. The expression on his face is one Anakin has never seen in all the years of standing in this man's presence. It lasts for perhaps 3/4 of a second before his control reasserts itself, but 3/4 of a second is long enough. Palpatine does not experience surprise. He has engineered his existence specifically to eliminate it. The expression that crosses his face now is therefore not surprise but something adjacent to it. Something that comes from a calculation, producing a result that should not be possible. He was told she was dead. He was told this by Darth Vader's own report, filed 3 years ago, confirmed through a Force probe that found no deception. And the report was true, in the only way that mattered. In the way that Ahsoka explained it to Bail Organa in a Dawn office on Alderaan. The man who said "then you will die" no longer exists. Vader is dead. What Palpatine built is gone. What he is looking at is the cost of that lie, arriving 3 years later with white blades and a destroyed door. "Hello," Ahsoka says to Palpatine. "I understand you've been looking for me." Anakin moves, not toward Palpatine, toward the throne's armrest, where his lightsaber has been sitting for the duration of the audience, and the 12 meters between him and it are now 12 meters through a room that has just fundamentally changed its configuration. The royal guards react. They are trained for exactly this, for the moment when a contained situation becomes uncontained, and 3 of them pivot toward him while the other 3 pivot toward Ahsoka. She takes the 3 that pivot toward her without breaking stride. He has seen Ahsoka Tano fight in more engagements than he can count, across multiple decades of a life that has contained too much combat, and he has never once seen her move the way she moves, in the next 4 seconds. It is not faster than he remembers. It is more precise, every motion reduced to its minimum necessary expression, nothing wasted. The fighting style of someone who has had 3 more years to understand what movement is for. 2 guards go down before they complete their turn. The 3rd gets his force pike up, and she goes under it, and is past him before the pike reaches its extension. Anakin reaches the armrest. His hand closes around the hilt of his lightsaber, and he feels what he always feels when he holds it, the Kyber crystal's signature in the Force, the specific resonance of a crystal that has been bled red for 16 years, that carries in its lattice the compressed memory of everything Darth Vader did while holding it. He looks at it for one breath. Then he closes his eyes and reaches into the crystal. He has thought about how to do this since the canyon on the dead planet, has turned it over and examined it from every angle during quiet moments on the Executor's Bridge, during the trench run at Yavin, during the long intervals between dead drops when he was alone with his armor, and the question of what came after. The Kyber crystal absorbs the intent of the person who carries it. The red bleed, the corruption that turns a crystal red, is pain and rage and darkness imposed on something that was never designed for those things. He gives the crystal something else instead. Not joy, he is not sure he has that yet, or that he can afford it yet. In this room with what remains of the Imperial apparatus between him and the door. What he gives it is true. It is specific. It is the blue eye and the broken mask looking up at Ahsoka in the temple sanctum. It is 4 words in a cipher layer that weren't part of any protocol. It is the particular shape of not being alone after 16 years of being alone in a way that had no name. The crystal resists him. He has always known it would. A thing bled red for 16 years does not simply release what was done to it, any more than a person does. He presses harder, pours everything the lightning left him into the sustained effort of it, and feels the moment the crystal's resistance gives way not as a victory, but as a door opening from the inside. The crystal making its own decision about what it has been carrying and what it no longer wants to carry. The red drains toward the lattice edges and thins and is gone. The process takes perhaps 10 seconds. Long enough that Ahsoka, halfway across the room, spares him one glance, checking, cataloging, filing before returning her attention to the guards. Long enough that he feels every one of those seconds as a cost the lightning has made expensive. Long enough for it to mean something. The crystal's signature in the Force shifts. The red bleeds out. The blade that ignites is white. The sound it makes is different. He has ignited this lightsaber 10,000 times in 16 years, and he knows every variation of its tone, every harmonic of the particular crystal's resonance under power. The tone that comes now is none of those. It is something the crystal was producing before Mustafar, before the altar on Coruscant, before everything, and it is something else as well. Something new that did not exist in the before, and exists now because of what happened in a canyon on a dead planet, and in a relay station in an asteroid field, and in a rebel base on Yavin, and in a dead drop cipher, and in a throne room where someone destroyed the doors to make a point. The white blade cast the same quality of light as Ahsoka's. In the throne room, now lit entirely by white on both sides, Palpatine looks at Anakin Skywalker holding a white lightsaber, and then at Ahsoka Tano holding two, and performs the arithmetic. His expression completes its return to control. When he speaks, his voice is the one he uses when the paternal register is no longer useful, the voice underneath the voice, older than the Senate and older than the Republic, and patient in the way that only something genuinely ancient is patient. "Anakin," he says. "Not Lord Vader. I am disappointed." "I know," Anakin says. The dark-robed figures at the wall come forward. The remaining royal guards close the flanking position. Palpatine descends one step from the throne's dais, his robes settling around him, his hands coming free of his sleeves. "You understand," he says, moving toward the center of the room, "that this changes nothing structurally. The Empire does not require my physical presence to function. The infrastructure I have built will survive this room." "It won't survive what we've been doing for 3 years," Ahsoka says. A pause, a genuine one. "The informant," Palpatine says. "The informant," she confirms. He looks between them, at the white blades, at Anakin's face, which is behind the rebuilt mask and therefore unreadable, and at Ahsoka's face, which is entirely readable and reading as something he has not often encountered. Someone who came here without a backup plan because they did not need one. "You were dead," he says to her. Simply, a statement of what his information contained. "I was," she says. "The man who killed me doesn't exist anymore." The dark-robed figures reach them. Ahsoka takes the first two without disengaging her attention from Palpatine, a peripheral awareness that manifests as a half-turn. 2 precise cuts. A redirect that uses the second figure's momentum to remove both of them from the fight simultaneously. It is efficient in the way that long mastery produces efficiency. No drama, no excess. Just the correct amount of force applied to the correct point. Anakin takes the remaining 3 guards. He does not enjoy this. He notes, as he moves through the engagement, that his left leg servo is compromised from the throne room floor and compensates automatically. He notes that the lightning damage to his neural interfaces has reduced his fine control in the right hand by approximately 15%. He adjusts for both. The white blade moves differently than the red did, lighter in his hand, the resistance less. As though the crystal is collaborating rather than being directed. He will need time to recalibrate to it. He does not have time. He uses it anyway. The last guard goes down as Anakin comes to stand beside Ahsoka. They are 4 meters from Palpatine. White blade and 2 white blades, in a throne room that contains only the 3 of them now and the quality of silence that follows a fight. Sharp-edged, temporary, the silence before the next thing begins. Palpatine looks at them, at the white blades, at the specific configuration of the 2 people holding them, master and apprentice. The boy she trained and the woman who trained him, older and damaged and here, standing together in a throne room sealed from the outside by doors that no longer exist. "I made you," he says to Anakin. Quietly, not rage, something more fundamental than rage. The tone of a craftsman looking at a tool that has turned in the hand. "You made Vader," Anakin says. "I made this." He lifts the white blade slightly, a minimal gesture, the most economical way to indicate everything. "It turns out, I'm better at it." Palpatine's eyes move to Ahsoka. "And you? You understand what he is, what he has done. You stand beside him anyway." "I stood beside him when he was worse than this," she says. "That was the easier version." A long silence. Then Palpatine smiles. The real one. The one that has nothing warm in it. The one that lives underneath all the others and has been there since before the Republic fell. It is, in its way, the most honest thing about him. "Then let us see," he says, "what you've built." His hands come up. Anakin and Ahsoka move to meet him. Palpatine does not begin at full power. This is a choice, not a limitation. Anakin recognizes it from years of watching the man operate, the way a master strategist opens with observation rather than commitment, gathering data before spending resources. The first exchange is therefore almost exploratory, force lightning in controlled bursts. The dark-robed figure's positions already mapped and committed to memory, Palpatine circling to find the seam between them. There is no seam. This is the thing he is discovering. He built Vader specifically to be without a counterpart, a weapon with no attachment, no flank to protect, no person whose safety could be leveraged against him. The arithmetic of isolating someone requires that isolation to exist, and Anakin and Ahsoka have had 3 years to become something that has no isolated flank, because neither of them operates as a separate unit anymore. She goes right when he goes left. Not on signal. Not on training. On the specific knowledge of how the other person moves that gets built across years of shared stakes and dead drops and 4 words in a cipher layer that were not part of any protocol. Palpatine finds no seam and escalates. The second movement is different. The lightning comes broader, not targeted bursts, but a sustained arc that fills the space between them and forces a split. Ahsoka takes the left, Anakin takes the right, and for 12 seconds they are managing individual engagements rather than a shared one. And those 12 seconds are the most dangerous of the fight. Anakin drives his damaged left leg servo and does not let it slow him. The 15% reduction in his right hand's fine control means his parries are wider than optimal, spending more movement to accomplish the same deflection. He compensates with economy elsewhere, letting the white blade do less and the Force do more, guiding the arcs rather than blocking them, redirecting rather than absorbing. He takes a partial strike across his left shoulder plate. The pain registers and he files it. Ahsoka takes 2 full strikes against crossed blades, and he feels the effort it costs her through the Force, the sustained drain of holding that much lightning at bay, the way it pulls from something deeper than technique. She is older than she was on Malachor. She is better than she was on Malachor. She is also not unlimited. Neither of them is unlimited. He thinks, this is the part where Vader would fall. Then he thinks, I am not Vader. He reaches across the split and does something he has not done in a coordinated engagement since the Clone Wars. He opens his Force sense fully to her, drops the internal wall that keeps his awareness contained to his own body, and shares the space. It is not a technique with a name in the Jedi archives. It is something they developed in the field, in the 3rd year of the war, during a siege on Umbara, when conventional communication was jammed, and they needed to function as one unit rather than 2. She feels it the moment he does it. Her left blade's angle changes by 8 degrees, creating an opening she couldn't see from her position, but he could from his. He moves into the opening simultaneously. The coordinated pressure breaks Palpatine's sustained arc at its source, not overpowering it, redirecting its generation point, forcing him to reset. The second movement ends. The third begins. Palpatine abandons restraint. This is what it looks like. The temperature in the throne room drops 4 degrees in 2 seconds. The lighting, already reduced, fails entirely, every fixture burning out simultaneously, leaving the room lit only by white blades and the blue-white of lightning, that now has no controlled arc but fills the air as an environment rather than a weapon. The Force signature of it presses on Anakin's chest like gravity, like the specific weight of accumulated dark side power releasing simultaneously. He has felt this before. On Mustafar, second-hand, through Padme's absence. On the Death Star, in the elevator, in the specific quality of Palpatine's attention during audiences. He has been living in the shadow of this for 16 years. He is not afraid of it. This is new. This is the thing that Darth Vader was never allowed to be. Unafraid of Palpatine specifically, in the room with him. With the lightning active. Vader's performance of fearlessness was always that. Performance, with the real thing underneath it that the Sith Code demanded he convert into power, and that instead just sat there, quietly poisoning everything. What Anakin has instead is something simpler. He is not afraid. Because there is nothing left to take. Padme is gone. The younglings are gone. 16 years are gone. What remains is Luke at 19 in an X-Wing, and Leia at 19 in a Senate chamber, and Ahsoka 2 meters to his right, managing a sustained lightning environment with crossed white blades, and the expression of someone who has already decided how this ends. He steps forward. Into the lightning. The suit was not designed for this. He has known this for 3 years, has run the calculation 100 times in quiet moments, how much sustained dark side energy the insulation can handle before the internal grounding fails completely. Before the neural interfaces become the path of least resistance for something that will not stop at nerve pain. The number is not large. He has always known it is not large. He puts himself between Palpatine and Ahsoka, not an impulse. A decision, made in full knowledge of what the suit can and cannot survive, with complete understanding of the arithmetic. He has better insulation than she does. He has a suit built by a Sith Lord to house a weapon, and for once in 16 years, that engineering serves a purpose that does not horrify him. He can absorb more of this than she can. So he absorbs it. The lightning saturates the grounding system in 4 seconds. In the 5th second it finds the left shoulder interface, and then the right, and then the base of his spine, and the pain is not something he can file anymore, because there is no available filing space, every system at capacity. The suit running damage assessments that he can feel rather than read. He holds position. He hears, in the 2-second window the distraction creates, Ahsoka move. She goes low and then up, the trajectory he taught her in the 2nd year of the Clone Wars, for closing distance on a Force lightning user. Use the floor, come from below the arc. Get inside the generation point before the next burst builds. She is faster at it than she was then. She is faster at everything than she was then. Her white blade finds its mark. The lightning stops. The silence is absolute. Palpatine does not fall dramatically. He goes the way all things go when the Force holding them together withdraws, incrementally. The energy leaving before the body registers it, a settling rather than a collapse. He lands on the throne room floor and does not get up, and his final expression is not rage or disbelief, but something closer to the assessment of a man who has run the calculation and found it simply does not balance. He does not speak. Anakin does not need him to. He becomes aware, a moment later, that he is on his knees. The left leg servo gave out, not during, which would have mattered, but after, which does not. His hands are on the floor. The white blade is still lit in his right hand, held without particular intention, an object in a grip that has forgotten it is holding something. Ahsoka is beside him, before he has fully processed the floor. Her hands find his shoulders, not the gentle contact of the canyon but something more immediate, more urgent, stabilizing rather than healing. She is reading the suit's damage the way she reads everything, quickly, thoroughly, without flinching at what she finds. Anakin, his name, in the voice she has been using for it across 3 years of dead drops and 1 canyon on a dead planet. Talk to me. I'm here, he says. How bad? The left servo is gone. The neural interfaces. He pauses where breath should complete the sentence. The interfaces took most of it. She is quiet for a moment. Her hands don't move. How long have you known this was the ceiling? 3 years, he says. She closes her eyes briefly, opens them. You could have told me. You would have changed the plan. Yes, she says, I would have. He looks at her. Behind the rebuilt mask, behind the imperfect seals and the slightly wrong angles at the left housing, something settles in him that has not been settled since a morning on Coruscant 16 years ago, when he stood at a window and watched the sun rise and believed, for the last time, that the day would be ordinary. Snips, he says. Her breath catches. Once quickly, I need you to know. He stops. Recalibrates. The words he needs are not the ones he has been practicing in quiet moments on the executor's bridge, the speeches he assembled and disassembled across 3 years of waiting. The words that come are simpler. You stayed. You actually stayed. She puts her forehead against his. I told you, she says, very quietly. Not this time. He closes his eyes. The throne room is silent around them, lit only by 2 white blades still active on the floor, their light steady and clean and casting no shadows. Somewhere beyond the sealed palace walls, the galaxy is doing what galaxies do, continuing, generating new crises, beginning the long complicated process of learning what it means to exist without the thing it has been organized around for 20 years. He feels it in the Force. Not clearly. Enough. He thinks about Luke. On Yavin. In a room full of people celebrating something they don't fully understand yet. He thinks about Leia, wherever she is, doing the next thing on the list, because Leia has always had a list and has never once stopped moving down it. He thinks about them not knowing each other, not knowing what they are, not knowing about a father who spent 3 years shepherding them through a war from the wrong side of it. They will be all right. He knows this the way he knew Luke's X-Wing in the Force, not as information, but as truth, the category of knowing that predates evidence. His breathing slows. Ahsoka keeps her forehead against his and does not move. "Tell him," Anakin says. "Tell Luke not Vader's story. The real one." "I will," she says. "Make sure he knows it ended right." "He'll know," she says. "I promise." The white blades on the floor burn steady. He breathes once more, fully, without effort, the rebuilt mask doing its final work. The lungs it has been sustaining across 3 years of impossible maintenance, making one last ordinary decision, and then does not breathe again. The rebel base on Yavin smells like jungle and fuel, and the specific exhausted relief of people who have just survived something they weren't certain they would survive. Ahsoka finds Luke in the hangar. He is standing beside his X-Wing, still in his flight suit, looking at the starfield through the hangar's open bay, with the expression of someone very young who has just done something very large and has not yet found the edges of it. She has seen this expression before. On a different face, in a different hangar, a long time ago. She stops beside him and looks at the stars with him for a moment without speaking, because some things should not be interrupted before they're finished. Then she holds out the lightsaber. He looks at it. White. Not the blue that came to him from Obi-Wan's keeping on Tatooine, not anything he recognizes from a training remote or a technical manual. He takes it from her hand and holds it with the careful uncertainty of someone receiving a thing they understand the weight of, without yet knowing what it weighs. "Who did this belong to?" he asks. "Your father," she says. "The real one. Not the story you've been told." She meets his eyes. "I have something to tell you, Luke. It will take a while. And some of it is going to be hard to hear." He looks at the lightsaber in his hand. Then, he looks at her. "Tell me," he says. She does. "Let us know what you'd like to see next." The end.